Welcome, fans, to episode number 10, believe it or not, of the Shooting from the Hip podcast with the Kingpin, Angel Medina. My name is Jack Kilby. There we go again. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling. And we're here today. We're very pleased to welcome a man who was right in the middle of the golden era of the WWF, and I could think of no better guest to help us delve into the topic of what if the wrestler union had come to fruition. And there's a little bit of historical background that we'll get into, but we're thinking of the time frame primarily led by Jesse Ventura prior to WrestleMania number 2. Before we welcome Mario Mancini to the show and ask him to go into a little bit about his background, both as a wrestler and another sphere. Angel, what's happening?
I'm doing good, brother. I'm doing good. I'm just enjoying my little vacation. We're doing this type of strike, and it's just a perfect example about unionization, about the becoming a one unit, because like right now I got to go strike tomorrow, with the brothers, because we're being treated unfairly and we want to get what we well deserved, So this is a great topic because I'm in the mix of it right now in the corporate world. So
amazing how that worked out. Mario, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time. Could you give us the fans a bit of a background and a dissertation about your career, not only in wrestling but in the other relevant areas, sir?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. I've cut down my podcast considerably these days, but I wanted to come on here with you guys because I found the subject very interesting. Number one, because I was there. Obviously, I broke in 8 months before WrestleMania 1. I broke in 6 weeks after I graduated high school. I turned 18 on June 21st, and July 31st, I turned pro against Greg Valentine in the WWF. So I was there throughout the whole melee. A lot of us get a kick out of it because I was actually there. I was in wrestling school. My trainer worked for the office. So I was actually there the night that Hogan took the belt from the Sheik. I was helping the Sheik back to the dressing room. I was also there for the wars, where the settle the score, hold back Roddy Piper. And so I'm like the Forrest Gump of wrestling. After I got out of wrestling, I tooled around for a couple of years. I decided to go to college. And then I met up with a gentleman that I 31 years ago that I still work for today, who convinced me to go to law school. So, this subject for me, there's a lot of to think about here. So what I want to do right now is I want to let you guys know, and everybody watching this podcast know, let's go over the elements right now, and let's go over, which is very interesting. So let's talk about a union. Okay. Let's talk about a union itself. Okay. So I remember I had a brief stint in the local 210, which was the Carpenters Union here in Norwalk, Connecticut. So I worked for the local 210, and every business that was in the local, I would go to the business office. The business agent would see me and say, "We have no work today," or, "Hey, I have work for you today. Go here, go there, go here, go there, go there." All right. So that's one kind of a union. Then let's take Sikorsky Aircraft in Stratford, Connecticut for an example. After that, they have a union. They have their own credit union, Sikorsky Federal Credit Union. They're in a union. Okay, so they work for Sikorsky and solely for Sikorsky. So when I was a professional wrestler, I don't know if it is right now. So I want you guys to fantasize about this. So when you were in the WWF, you were working for Titan Sports, you were an independent contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now let's do the test between an independent contractor and an employee. So an independent contractor means you work anywhere.
Correct.
An independent contractor means you can be hired and you can be fired. Okay, by that employer. It means that they delegate their duties to your duties to you. They tell you what time to start and what time to finish.
No medical.
Right. They give you your job description. That's an employee. If in pro wrestling you were a true independent contractor, could you imagine this, guys? Let's go all the way back. If you were Paul Orndorff, you can work for the WWF, the NWA, we're talking before the WCW, the NWA, the AWA, Florida Championship Wrestling, right? You could work for any of these you wanted, but you couldn't if you were with the WWF. You only worked for the WWF. Yet, when the end of the year came, you got a 1099 and you were an independent contractor. How can that be? Now, if you, in today's day and age, I don't know the setup now, but I'll take three: MLW, AEW, and WWE. If you work for these companies, you're exclusive to these companies.
Yeah.
But if they still get a 1099 at the end of the year, they're calling them an independent contractor. Okay. So when you talk about a union, are we setting up a union like a Sikorsky Federal Credit Union, a Sikorsky Aircraft, where you're with one company and that company forms a union and that one company has a union rep? Or is Jesse Ventura setting up a local for all professional wrestlers, whether you're in the show, whether you're in the WCW, whether you're in Ring of Honor, AEW, and pro, if you're a wrestler, Screen Actors Guild, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. In my
Right.
brain, like the Screen Actor covers all the industry.
All of them, right? Kingpin, all
Yeah.
of them. So, Jack, when you bring this subject up, it's just not Jesse Ventura trying to get health insurance for the boys. There's a lot involved here. There's a lot to consider and a lot of legal questions and the legal aspects to consider. I mean, let's face it, if Hulk Hogan went over to the AWA to defend his WWF title, Vince McMahon, he'd be fired. You know what I mean? Because he works solely for the WWF, yet is an independent contractor. That's why I said before we got on the air, I'm going to make it go, You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot to consider here. So as far as I know, my memory serves me, and other hosts of podcasts will say, well, that's great because this guy's got a memory of an elephant, and it's a curse and a blessing. The only wrestler I knew that had health insurance through Lloyd's of London was Curt Hennig. And when Curt got hurt, he was paid like $5,000 a week to stay out. Other than that, I don't know of anybody else who bought a Lloyd's of London policy. It wasn't made public anyway. I just knew Curt had it. So
yeah, but the Lloyd's of London is pretty expensive to get. You have to have some type of bankroll to even.
The premium, brother, is through the roof.
Yeah.
Through the roof. Nobody can afford that unless you're making, $15,000 a week. You know what I mean? Nobody can afford that. So, what Jesse tried to do was let me tell you something about Jesse Ventura. He's the most stand-up, outspoken, obviously, honest person I've ever met. One of them I've ever met. He's a tremendous human being. What Jesse is talking about right now, right? When I go, I kept looking at my instant messenger. I thought you contacted me through. Then I went to my Twitter. Then I went to Instagram. And then I went, oh, wait a minute. He might have texted me. You guys go like, yeah, you're old. Well, that's what Jesse was talking about. He's talking about Paul Roma, my partner at Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling, who has titanium knees. He's talking about Hulk Hogan, who has those same titanium knees, hip replacements. Jesse Ventura was talking about when we were done bumping, what do we have? What do we have for ourselves? You know what I mean? And they all have nothing. Now
Well, it's almost like the NFL back in the days. The old timers from way back don't have any type of not insurance, but any money. They, guys with jacked up knees and stuff like that. And I mean, the new future now, they got like pensions, like baseball players get pensions, and you're like, pensions? These guys making millions and they're getting pensions. But
right.
the old school guys are not getting anything, and they're all beat up.
Right. But you know what I mean? An argument could be made, though. You say, well, listen, not our fault you didn't save your money. You know what I mean? It's like, I know I won't mention their names, but because they it's funny because back in the 80s, I had a handful of guys, more than a handful of guys that treated me as an equal. So I was able to walk in there and have a head-on-head conversation with Tito Santana, with Kurt Hennig, with Tony Atlas. I was able to talk to these guys and be friends with them, and Hercules Hernandez and guys.
I met those guys.
Well, then there were the guys who made you feel like a job, like you're just a jobber. And ironically, I'm very close friends with those guys today. And at the wrestling conventions, I just let it out while we were at dinner, because we were laughing, we were having a good time. And I looked at one of them and I said, why couldn't we be like this back in the 80s? Why couldn't we be this close? Why couldn't we have this rapport? He went, Mario, it was just different back then, The schedules were hectic. Everybody was tired and cranky. It was just different, Mario. I'm sorry. But we're very close to these guys now. And these are the guys that are dead broke.
Yeah. But you know what, Mario? I mean, I'm looking at it from a different perspective, because there's certain guys that, like Tito Santana, school teacher. George the Animal Steel, intelligent guy, has money. But I just think that regardless of if you saved your money or you got another career and you're making buku dollars, 6 figures, you still want to be taken care of for what you have done for the business. Regardless of, you could touch your money and get titanium hips and all that stuff, but you should not be held responsible because you made that company money.
Well, listen, Kingpin in another aspect, I got Mark Henry all mad at me, because Scott Wilder, I work for Scott Wilder Promotions, and he said, hey, Mario, I want to take you to the big event a couple of years ago. I go, yeah, I never been there. He goes, I think you do pretty good there. I said, okay. So we went there. We scheduled to go there 6 weeks or maybe shorter before that happened. Announced that The Undertaker was coming. So, Mark is going to take everybody's money. But you know what I mean? When you're at a wrestling convention, people will go, if there's that huge name there, they're not coming to your table. That wasn't the point. The point was, Scott looked at me and he said, you're the first guy I ever worked with in the WWF. I went, yes. He goes, well, you want to see him? I go, just want to shake his hand for 10 seconds, congratulate him on the Hall of Fame, and tell him I'm glad I was the one that kicked it off. First tombstone, right? Couldn't get 10 seconds with him. That's disrespect. I got hot. And I had mentioned what he was getting for the appearance from Fetterman, and a middleman got involved, and he got a hold of me and said, Mark Henry's really pissed at you. And I'm like, and I finally saw Mark at a convention, and I walked up to him and I said, we got heat? He goes, I just didn't agree with what you said. And I said, well, it wasn't inside the wrestling business. It was outside the wrestling business. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, I can take my phone and tell you what The Rock got in his last movie. It's not going to get me heat. I go, if I worked with you at WrestleMania and you told me your payday, and then I spread that to the boys, I could see the heat, and I could even see me having a receipt coming. I said, but this was outside the wrestling business. And at the end of the day, we agreed to disagree because I was from a different era than he is. And we shook hands and we agreed to disagree. Now, the thing about that is, I'm not looking for any compensation. I'm not looking for any money. I'm just looking for respect, Kingpin. I'm just looking for respect. Now, if you look back, you know, I have a family. You know, I have a father. You know, I had a father. And being in Canada, being in a 6-man tag team against Jimmy Jack Funk, Dory Funk Jr., and Terry Funk, and I look at my second dad, who was Chief Jay Strongbow, and I said, Chief, who's taking it? He said, you are. I said, okay. What's the finish? And he told me what the finish was. And then they were gonna cow tie me around my wrists, around my ankles, like a cow, a steer. And then they pull my trunks down and brand my ass. FB Funk Brothers with an ink branding iron.
Yeah.
And while I'm on the canvas and my hands and my feet are tied and I'm waiting to get branded, the only thing I could think about was my father. He said, I got to keep this match away from my father. I can't see this on TV. You know, this is something that they don't think about. And in the arguments I would have with Strongbow and Pat Patterson come 1990, when I was in there for 6 years, saying that from 84 to 90, I paid my dues. I did the pile driver on the concrete floor with Ordendorff, and I did the stretcher match. I did the stretcher with Bundy. You know what I mean? I did the stretcher with Savage. I got branded in my ass. I got my hair cut by Beefcake. Where's my push? I paid my dues. Now that's just trying to get a push in the business. Now being 57 and I look back at what I did, speaking of what you gentlemen are talking about, do I think I should be, you know, I should look at Kingpin? Do I think I should look out my back door and see the waves hitting the beach, and I'm out there sipping a margarita because of the career I had? No, I was on the low end of the wrestling food chain. I don't expect that kind of compensation, but I still sacrifice my body, which I live with every day. And you know, I was a carpenter. Listen, I can't draw you a house. I can't draw one, but I can build you one. You know, and so what I would have liked a little bit of compensation. Sure. Do I think that they should call Tony Alice and go, Tony, how are you? Are you doing okay? Is there anything we can do for you? You know, should they call Tito? How about Valentine? Listen, these guys, not Mario Mancini, I'll even say Barry Horowitz, they should be calling these guys going, are you okay? They should be on a payroll. But being on a payroll would be the same thing as a pension. You know what I mean? Yeah. So these are guys that really contributed. Look at Bret Hart. You know, I got to be honest with you. I love Bret. Bret always liked me, but I have a thing. I don't lie. I don't lie. That's why people love my podcast, because I don't give a shit. So, I saw Bret about 4 or 5 years ago with Roma, and hey Roma, how you doing? Blah 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 blah. I go, hey Bret, how you doing? He goes, hey, how are you? And I'm like, what was that? So I realized he didn't know who I was. So now I have Mario Mancini t-shirts I go to conventions with. So a few months ago, I saw him and I had my Mario Mancini t-shirt on. He looked at the t-shirt and he went, Mario, how you doing? I go, good, Bret. How are you? How are you? And he gave me the greatest compliment in the world, man. I really could have gave up my wrestling school and my promotion I do at Roma and just right off in the sunset, he said, you were good. You were good, Mario. I said, thank you, Bret. That means a lot coming from you. He goes, no, listen. And he looked at Rome and he said, you threw these guys against the ropes. You didn't know what was coming back at you. He goes, with Mario, you always knew what you got when you got in the ring with Mario. So it's guys like Bret Hart who lost their brother. You know what I mean? Who contributed more than anybody I know to the wrestling business, had a birthright in the wrestling business. Okay, from a royal family of the wrestling business, he's the one that should be taken care of too. You know what I mean? They should make sure these guys are okay. Hogan, they should make sure all these guys are okay. I mean, not everybody can go out and do a one-man show or do an autograph convention for 250 grand. Sorry, Mark, for $250,000. You know what I mean? So I listen, I just want you to know, even though I was on the lowest end of the wrestling food chain, when it comes to some of these guys from the Attitude Era on, my attitude is this: I was there first.
Yeah. But you know what's funny, Mario? You know, you're bringing up all this situation. I remember when I was green back in the days on the road with Jimmy Snooker, and I remember one time we were going up to a carnival, and they always try to pull a high spot in the business. But I remember one time Jimmy wasn't, you know, he was making money, but he wasn't making money, you know, because he was surviving off, you know, the independents. But I remember one time we were driving, and they mentioned that they put out these action figures, these legend action figures with Snooker, and he didn't know about it, and he had to call the corporate office and be like, hey brother, what's going on? You know, what's up with this action figure that I've been hearing about? Oh, Jimmy, we've been trying to get a hold of you. You know, we got a check for you, you know. And if he would have not called, they would have not said anything until he just found out from the boys, like, hey man, I just saw your action figure at Walmart, man. It looks great. It was the Legends, you know, and he had, you know, they cut him a check. But it's like you have to like you got to hunt for your money that you're well deserved, that you need to get, but they won't look for you until you call them out. And that's the thing about this business, is that look at Iron Sheik, you know, great guy, met him, wonderful person. But when he passed away, you know, you see all the like accolades, oh, Iron Sheik, oh, Hulk Hogan, the you know, the big Tritantron, you know, the vignette. But I started thinking like, man, but they never took care of him. I never heard him like, hey, brother, you know, thank you. You know, let's pay your rent. Let's take care of your health. But at the end, when he died, the man who made WrestleMania, who made Hulkamania. And I'm like, man, that's pretty fucked up. You know?
That's the business, bro.
No, I know how it is. You know,
that's the business.
Like you said, when you open that door and you're looking on the beach, I'm the guy on the beach picking up the trash with the fucking stick.
Yeah. So you know, I know my place. I know my place in the business, and
I know too.
You know, so it's not like I'm looking for it, but I look at these guys like my brothers now, and when I'm at the conventions, I look after them. I go over to Greg Valentine, who didn't have a promoter, bring him in, and I go, Hammer, you okay? Do you need anything? At one convention, one fan said, Mr. Valentine, you gave me too much money back. And I went up to him. I said, Hammer, I will sit here with you. I will give up my table and I will sit here with you. Are you okay? No, Mario, I'm fine. I go, are you sure? And Demolition were right next to him. I go, Billy, what do I do? They go, no, Mario, he's fine. He just didn't get a lot of sleep last night. He's tired. That's it. He's not like has dementia or anything. Don't, you know, he'll be okay. We'll keep an eye on him. I said, okay. So, you know, these guys are my very close friends now. You know, I see Beefcake, you know, leaning over while he's walking. I'm like, oh God, man, I can remember being snippy with him in the dressing room because Eddie had a bad habit of going to some front of somebody's head with the shears and just making a line right down their head. And I said, listen, you cut my hair in the back and you cut it even, because, you know, it was the 80s. I had a mullet. So he's like, I'm like, Eddie, if I hear those shears come to the front of my head, I will wake up. They'll have to cut the tape. The back of I could feel him back there. You know what I mean? So, and Eddie's really happy to see me. Valentine's always got a big smile on his face for me. You know, Demolition, you know, Tito, Tony Gurria, you know, Tony Atlas is one of my closest friends, other than Roma, obviously being the closest. But, you know, I look out for these guys when I go because I was so young when I broke in. you know, they look at me as that same 18-year-old kid, even though I'm 57, you know, they look, hey, there's Mancini, you know. So again, back to that, you know, organizing, you can understand the amount of money Vince McMahon would have lost if, number one, he put these guys on the books. He made them employees. I mean, these guys would have been pissed, the ones that were making $12,000 a week and then seeing their net check after Uncle Sam got done with them. You know what I mean? But that's why everybody saved their gas receipts, the rental car receipts, the toll receipts, the food receipts, you know, doing their laundry. Every receipt they can get our hands on, we had for the accountant at the end of the year, because the only thing he paid for was a plane ticket.
You know what's funny? Johnny, my trainer is Johnny Rods, the unpredictable Johnny Rods, and he told me a story that back in the days when they used to take draws, you know, they used to write it in the book. Hey, let me get 200, let me get 600.
Correct.
And when Johnny was in Puerto Rico, wrestling as a super medic for Carlos, you know, after the senior died, Vince Jr. took the book with all, you know, the draws and turned it into the IRS. And that's when they knocked on Johnny's door in Puerto Rico saying, hey, you owe us $30,000, $40,000, you know. And, you know, and I'm just saying, like, even Vince, yeah, I mean, like I said, he didn't want to take care of the boys, you know. Like I said, these are the things where these guys, like, made the company. Johnny was the soldier that tested everybody when they came through the door. And I don't know. It's just, what just bugs me is that, like I say, when you see Valentine, when you see Bill Eadie and you know, all those guys that just paved the way for all of us, and I don't know, man, it just breaks my heart. And I'm not saying that broke or anything. I'm not putting their business out there, but they should be taken care of, you know. And that's the thing.
It's funny that you mentioned Johnny Rods and the word soldier, because Vince, I don't know what kind of stories he told you, but Vince depended on him, Kingpin, for everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. So, you know, the funny story is Johnny, he wasn't there when I broke in. And he probably showed up 3-4 months after I broke in. It's probably because he was in Puerto Rico doing that thing.
Yeah.
So I had gotten close to S.C. Jones. In fact, God bless S.C. Jones, may he rest in peace. He smartened me up to the business. He's the one that took me in his brand new Buick LeSabre. We hit the road, and he taught me the business because I was a mark and I was green. And when he was done with me, I was no longer a mark.
Yeah.
Marked me up completely. So now I'm coming into Poughkeepsie. I got my bag over my shoulder. I got my dip in my mouth. And I came walking into the dressing room, and my brother that I love so much, Jose Luis Rivera, no matter what, that dude made me laugh until I cried. I see him at conventions. He still does the same thing to me, just makes me laugh until I cry. So I have a big bellowing laugh, and Johnny's near SD, and he goes, who is that? He said, oh, that's Mario Mancini. That's Tony Altomar's kid, you know, out of his school, you know. He goes, why is he laughing like that? He's got that dip in his mouth. He said, I'm going to mess him up. I'm going to go over there and whack him out. So he goes, no, he's a really good kid. You don't want to do that. And by the way, I sat next to Johnny at one of these conventions a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
We're very good friends. So he saw me, went, hey. But then SD Jones came up to me and he said, I need a favor from you. And I said, what's up? He goes, do you trust me? I go, after what you did for me, SD, yeah, I trust you. He goes, tonight you sit here and shut up. Don't say a word. No laughing. Nothing. I said, SD, I can't have fun with it. He goes, Mario, nothing. You hear me? I said, okay. I sat there stone-faced all night just to calm Johnny down because he was going to kill me. So, but after that, I got to know him and everything, and everything was cool. I I even worked for him as an independent in Sheepshead Bay a couple of times. So, yeah, it's funny you mentioned Johnny. I love Johnny, and I always did. He was a hell of a guy. I understand he's having some difficulties now, but he was a good guy.
Yeah, I touch base with him periodically, and come think I'll probably reach out to him tomorrow. But he's doing good. And Jack, I'm sorry, man. We're chopping it up here, man. I know you got some other,
I just wanted to follow up on a couple of the really salient points that Mario raised. One, I was gonna get into the independent contractor status and some of the abuses inherent in that. So this is a two-part question for both of you gentlemen. There was a fairly high profile lawsuit that I believe Scott Levy, a Raven champion, to have some revisions to that and have wrestlers be considered employees, and that didn't seem to be successful. So I'm wondering how, given the fact that it's pretty, when you're working for a company and you're under contract, you're an employee, like the bigs anyway. You like Mario, you pointed out, you can't just work. Say back in the day, you couldn't flip to Crockett and back and forth. So we've got a long-standing documentation and history here about how this has been a pretty flagrant abuse. So that's question number one. Why is that? Do you think nobody's broken through on that? And the second question is, if they're not willing to recognize wrestlers, the big organizations, as employees, is there a way in which you can see a system could be put in place to get, number one, healthcare insurance, and number two, some sort of a pension, other than leaving it up to each individual to purchase their own?
I believe on the first part that, they came to work for the WWF or the WWE. And if I were to guess, if I were to put my legal mind to it, there also is an element where you show up every day at the same place and work for the same employer. In this case, maybe the loophole is that you don't show up to the same place. I'd have to research it some more.
Well, I think, if you had a contract, and you're the heavyweight champion, you could stipulate where you can't go to other organizations because you're their champion,
right?
But you could have something in the fine print where you're covered in certain aspects of the, in the game. You know what I mean? But if you're the champion, like a Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair, they don't want you to go to AWA. And because they're not going to treat you the same as WWE, because they might squash you, or they might, you know what I mean? Like, they're giving you a bigger push in the company that you're at. So they could fine tune your contract to make sure that you're not making them look bad. That's just my opinion.
Jack, also, I'm sure there's a stipulation in the contract that says the agreement can be terminated at any time for any reason by either party. Mm. So if I'm working for you and I have a contract for you, and I'm not an employee at will, that's another thing. I've read these contracts, and these contracts actually say you're an employee at will. Okay, and so you sign that contract, you're working for that company, but you're an at will employee, which means if they didn't like the way you wore your hair one day, you're gone. You know what I mean? You're an employee at will, could be fired for any reason, any time. They also could be using that as a kind of a loophole, because if I work for you and I sign a contract, and 8 months into the contract, I leave and you suffer financial loss because of that, well, you can sue me for the remainder of the contract, right? Mm-hmm. So in this case, they might argue that if the contract is broken, then, there's nobody suing for, any losses or anything. They just part ways.
Yeah.
They also couldn't get away with that. Yeah, Kingpin.
No, I was just going to say, just like certain individuals, they have a morals clause.
Right.
If they could just word it whatever, and if they feel you violated it, they can let you go.
And there is a moral clause in there. So, you know, the second part of that, you know how easy, Jack, it would have been. It would have been so easy for an option for Vince, because he sure, you know, I got a letter from Titan Sports one time through the mail, and it wasn't my check. So I didn't know what it was. And I opened it up, and it was a letter from Vince that stated that from now on, we are to dress business casual, particularly in a blazer, to the arenas. And at the end of his letter, it said, if the NFL can do it, we can.
Yeah, but the NFL's getting paid.
Right? Yeah, if the NFL can do it, we can.
Yeah.
It would have been just as easy. Now listen how simple this is. An opt-in. So if they don't hear from you, it's an opt-out. It's almost like the reverse of a class action lawsuit. Okay. So in a class action lawsuit, they send you a letter that says you're a member of the class. And if you don't want to be a member, you have to mail in this opt-out form, and they'll opt you out of the class action. In this case, if he just sent a letter that said, I'm offering to withhold 5% of your weekly wages for a 401k.
Yeah.
And those of you who are interested, let me know. And those of you who aren't interested, that's fine. But, you know, you get a guy like Hercules Hernandez, I knew for sure was making $7,000 a week. Okay. So 5% of that into 401k, you know, life insurance. Here's the thing. As far as health insurance, there is nobody on the face of the earth. You know, it's funny because I was having lunch somewhere, and somebody goes, well, the submarine, they signed waivers. So I had to open up my mouth. I said, and they can wipe their ass with those waivers. You can wipe your ass with those waivers. Because if there was a defect in that submarine, that's a full-blown lawsuit.
Yeah.
All right. Other than that, you know, it's funny. I don't mean to gas myself up, but I'm watching the morning news, and there's a lawyer on there, and the host goes, what do you think of all the passengers that perished in this? And you know, what are their families or any kind of compensation? And I'm sitting here drinking my coffee, and I'm going, it's assumption of the risk. And he looked at her and he goes, well, the first thing is, by all of them going down there, they assume the risk. And that is a theory in law called the assumption of the risk. And I just kind of giggled, because it always feels good to know that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's to your point, Jack. So if somebody gets their arm broken or their neck broken, like Paul Roma did, or like Bruno Sammartino did, and you know, if your neck gets broken and you get spine fusion and you have $400,000 in bills, the insurance company's got to pay for that. I mean, they're not going to insure such a high risk
occupation
individual. You know what I mean? It's like me. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll even go this personal with you. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm counting the years. I think it's 4 more years. I have $1 million life insurance policy split between my 3 daughters. And I took that out 16 years ago. Well, in 2014, I got diagnosed with diabetes. Now, when that 20-year term expires and I try to get life insurance, my life insurance premium right now is $556 every quarter. So if that expires and I don't die before it expires, and I'm looking to still split that $1 million policy, my 3 daughters, because I have type 2 diabetes, what am I going to be paying? $3,000 a quarter, $4,000 a quarter?
Yeah.
Because I'm a risk.
Yeah.
When you enter, like I tell my students, listen, you want to join? Join. This is not Saturday night bowling. This is not a hobby. Okay? This isn't anything you screw around with. You can leave this ring in a wheelchair. Because it's hot. Anybody who walks through those ropes are risking their life. They literally are risking their life. You know, it definitely their health. You know what I mean? So I've seen some crazy things happen in the ring. I've seen a guy get paralyzed in the ring. You know what I mean? So as far as health insurance or any kind of insurance, you're a high risk. And like Kingpin said, and I said Kurt was the only one, and he's like, you know, those premiums got to be through the roof because, you know, it's just like this, Jack. You go, hey, I'm Jack. How are you? I'm looking for a life insurance policy. And they go, well, what do you do for a living? And you go, well, I'm a stunt man. You know what I mean? They go, well, you're a stunt man. Yeah. And I jump out of airplanes. I skydive too. Well, you're at a higher percentage of dying. You know, you're high risk. Going in a professional wrestling ring is a high risk.
It's just like Tom Cruise. They don't want to insure him because he does his own stunts. That's why all the Mission Impossibles and stuff like that. You know, but to answer Richard's question about CTA, I'll be honest. I think I have it. It's just certain things I've been forgetting. I even forgot who Rich Little was. Not saying I forgot, but I was watching it on TV and I'm like, you know, like, and I knew who the hell Rich Little is, but at that moment, I couldn't get his name out of my mouth.
Yeah, Kingpin, I got to tell you right now, man. I mean, I know to look at me, somebody would guess in my mid-50s, but I would think you're like in your late 30s, early 40s, man. I can't believe you know who Rich Little is.
I'm 51, man. I know who Don Rickles. I know all of them. But it's just weird that it kind of like freaked me out that I'm like, you know, like I'm trying to remember the name and I'm like, and I'm getting mad because I know who the hell Rich Little is, but at that time, I couldn't remember his name.
Those moments. I mean, there's a guy, there's Richard on here. Richard, I got to be honest with you. I was called for CTE, but I'm going to sound like a real asshole right now. I hope you don't mind. They called me for the CTE class action lawsuit. I bowed out. Do you know why? Because 8 years in the WWE, WWF, I never hit my head. Ever. Never. That chin was always tucked. I was always aware of my surroundings. I did so many jobs and took so many bumps that I became a professional at protecting myself.
Now, be honest with you, the bumps, not a problem. I always tucked my chin in, all that stuff. It was all the, in ECW, that I was chair shots to the head. Couldn't put your hand, you know.
That's one thing you got over on me, man. I only took maybe 3 chair shots in my whole career, in my whole, you know, being associated with pro wrestling for 39 years now. I might have took 3 or 4 chair shots to the back. Kingpin, I've never taken a chair shot to the head, ever.
And I'll give you another story, which is I was wrestling in, I forgot where it was, but Sid Vicious was on the show, and Just Incredible and Sabu were doing an angle, and they had me do security. I was still new in the company, so I didn't have a gimmick at the time. Hey, we need to use you. You're going to be one of the Atlas security guards. Sid Vicious is going to come out. He's going to reach and grab both of them for the choke slam. You're going to be in the ring, and you're going to grab his arm to stop him. And then he's just going to do like the Undertaker type of turn towards you and focus his attention on you. He's going to grab you by the throat, and he's going to choke slam you out the ring through a table. In my brain, you know, if I'm going to choke slam someone, I'm going to pick him up, hold his butt, turn him sideways so he can land on the table. He grabbed me. I grabbed his hand, and he literally walked me to the ropes, picked me up, and pushed me backwards. So when I fell, my shoulders hit the apron, and my head hit the table. Table broke. The first thing I did was, I'm not going to lie, I laid there, and I shook my legs just to make sure I was moving. But after I got out, and security, because I was supposed to be injured, and they took me out, I had this huge hematoma on the back of my head. And Devon was like, "Hey, brother, you okay?" And I'm like, and, you know, I was the kid that didn't want to complain. And I'm like, "I'm all right." He goes, "You sure? Are you serious? You know, you got this big old goose egg." Remember that cartoon where they go, "How many lumps do you want?" "Oh, 3 or 4." And the Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, I do.
That nut was about. I mean, it was huge. It was white on the top. It was purple on the outside. It looked like it was just placed there like a prop. And I caught a hematoma from that. So, you know, taking a body slam, suplex, getting tossed off the top rope. You know, I mean, I was. No problems. It was always people putting my body in their hands, or, "Hey, we're going to hit you with the chair shot. Don't put your hands up." And I'm like, "God damn it." You know, and being green, I didn't put my hands up, take the chair shot to the head.
Yeah.
So it was my stupidity. But again, you know, didn't want heat and didn't want in my spot. So I had to sacrifice my health you know, for that, you know.
And I'm talking about, Jack. That's what I'm talking about. Now, Jack, I want you to think about this. All right. I don't know Kingpin's story, but this is. I want you to think about this. 1980, 14 years old. Bruno retires. I look at my family, and I go, "I'm going to be a pro wrestler for the WWF." And they go, "Yeah, right." And I go, No. I'm going to be a professional wrestler and then become a professional wrestler. Why? I mean, this man could have gotten brain damage. For what? Because he wanted to walk through the curtain and he wanted to entertain people because he's in love with the business, just like me. All right. And you know, I sat down with Bill Eadie at the end of a convention and I said, "Bill, I got to tell you something." And he goes, "What?" I go, "You're one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever seen in my life." I go, "I know Brett and stuff like that, but for me, it's you." I go, "Because I saw you as the Masked Superstar in 1981 when I was 15 years old in the New Haven Coliseum working with Backlund in the main event. And they didn't throw one kick or one punch. They worked. They wrestled. I'd never seen two people wrestle like that before in my life. Technical wrestling." And, you know, today people break into the entertainment business. I didn't break into the entertainment business. I broke into the wrestling business. And we took pride on if we could work or not. That was the question. That was Vince. You see an interview with Vince McMahon in the past 10 years. He goes, "The pro wrestling business is from here to here." Well, you know what the question was in 1984? Can he work?
Yeah.
Can he work? Can he work? That was the question. Can he work? So working was the most important thing. Can you work? You know, so, you know, we went in there. See, I just said it last week to one of the students. I said, "You see, pro wrestling wasn't a business to me. It was a romance. I loved the business and I loved being a pro wrestler and loved getting into the ring, feeling the turnbuckles, the ropes against my back. It was a romance." There's a difference between being a wrestler and just being in the business. You know what I mean? To make a payday or what have you. You know what I mean? So Kingpin and I are the people that went in there for the love of it. And it's people like that who sacrifice themselves, you know what I mean, that should have something to show for it. You know what I mean? So and nobody does.
Yeah.
No, nobody does. I have a very dear brother of mine, the Guardian of Chaos, Big Daddy. "Oh, how you doing? How you doing, Big Daddy?" "I'm not doing good today. Hard for me to get out of bed. My back." He was never a pro wrestler, but he was a manager in the independent circuit, and he was in demand. One of the only managers that companies would fly all over the country for him to do an angle because he took bumps, and that was the thing. At the end of it, he got his. You know, Bundy splashed him or gave him the avalanche, or, you know, the Samoans gave him the Samoan drop and everything. And he took a beating. He took an absolute beating in the ring, and he wasn't even a wrestler. It's guys like that stay on the phone with me to this very day for an hour, talking about my company, talking about the wrestlers, talking about the storylines, talking about ways to get more people through the door, doing his podcast, his YouTube channel, his thing. It's all wrestling. Big Daddy it's all his. Aside from his wife and his granddaughter, his whole life is put his time into pro wrestling. And it's a shame because these are the genuine people. These are the genuine people. And there are guys out there that got into the wrestling business that were in something else and couldn't make it. And they walked into the business and made a ton of money and walked out, but they don't have those dreams that you have at night in your 50s.
Yeah.
And you wake up in the middle, you wake up and you wonder what went on. You're getting thrown around the crowd or something, or God forbid my dreams that I'm over.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's funny. When I wrestled in Puerto Rico, when I left ECW and I wrestled for Victor, Puerto Rico is a different beast. It's old school wrestling, and I remember when I got there, it was. I mean, I still remember it was duck the clothesline, duck the elbow, high cross body, kick out, drop kick, shoot you to the ropes, hip toss, backdrop, take a powder, bring you in the hard way, rest hold, and the fans were like. Rah! After the match, I'm sweaty and I'm like, man, I could have went another 20 minutes because it was so easy. But the fans were just on the edge of the seats. Puerto Rico is a different at the time in the 90s and the 80s, different way of wrestling. It's probably still the same, but I just had the best time out there.
So this raises a question then, and I think it's a good one to summarize our discussion. And that is, do you see any change in the future in terms of a overall, and to clarify something earlier, Ventura was speaking about like an overall professional association, I think that went through companies, et cetera, et cetera. But do you see that situation changing given the fact that Andrew Yang, a politician, activist, was quite out there. I believe it was 2022 last year, calling for UFC competitors and professional wrestlers to be unionized. That was hot on the heels of a famous tweet by Selena Vega, who said, "I'm in favor of unionization." Then she was gone. So do you see this, given the fact that this is the right thing to do, provide people with support in their golden years, a pension, what have you, a more caring hand, if you will. Do you see that as ever coming to fruition in the future? And start with you, Mario.
I do, Jack. I do, and I think it's because of the three letters that you stated at UFC. I really do think that they're going to change since they're involved in this now. I think I do see light at the end of the tunnel. I really do. Unfortunately, I don't know as far as UFC. I mean, when you really think about it, that's even worse than pro wrestling, right? Because that's supposed to be a shoot. It's supposed to be a shoot, Kingpin, the UFC. Sometimes you really don't know if it is or it is or it isn't. It's just one guy going over. Only the difference is you're getting the shit knocked out of you while you're doing a job for real. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's a shoot or a work. So that being said, this is what's going to suffer. Well, here's the thing, Jack. And I'll make you think about this. You can't use the word wrestler in the WWE. You can't use that word. How sad. Can't use that word wrestler.
It's ridiculous.
So is the day going to come, Kingpin, when it can't be called professional wrestling? And the day that it comes that it's not called professional wrestling might be the time where those benefits might come in, because it might just be all Hollywood, and it just might be acrobatics, You might not see people going out of the ring anymore. You might not see kicks and punches anymore or anything like that. You might just see what I call a Bruce Lee movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the day they stop calling it professional wrestling, maybe. Listen, I don't watch the product. And as an owner of an independent pro wrestling company and co-instructor at Paradise Alley, I teach on Mondays and Tuesday nights. There's no doubt Paul Roma's the head instructor of that wrestling school, of course, because he was, if I had 1,000 matches, he had 10,000, and he was in WrestleMania and I wasn't, so of course he's the head instructor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I tell them, one day we're not scripted here. Nobody's gonna, when I have a class on promos, they give me a wrestling promo and then I go, cut me a promo on a hairdryer. And I still teach them old school.
Yeah.
Is the day gonna come where I can't even teach that anymore? Kingpin talking about this stuff about his matches in Puerto Rico. It was just a couple of weeks ago. There was a tag team match, and I said, "Okay, guys, take it on your own." And there were a bunch of moves, made no rhyme, no reason, and it went about 18 minutes. I said, "I can cut this match down to 10 minutes and have it mean something." Well, how are you going to do that, boss? I go, easy. You just put in 2 false tags. I'll turn the place upside down. 2 false tags. That's all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's, meaning this, Jack. I don't watch it because the psychology's gone. The psychology's gone. All that stuff's gone. And I get criticized. You own a wrestling school. You should watch wrestling to keep up with. Well, you know what? No, because the product sucks.
Yeah, I don't even watch it.
I don't watch it either. I haven't watched it for years. Years. I haven't watched it for years. I haven't watched it so much that in 2014, a guy came up and poked me on the shoulder and said, Mario Mancini. And I turned around and go, yeah, hi, how are you? And he goes, good. My name is Matt Stryker. I go, nice to meet you.
Oh, I know Matt.
I go, are you in the business? And he goes, what? I said, are you in the business? He goes, yeah. I go, who'd you work for? He goes, the WWE. I go, were you a wrestler? He goes, well, yeah, at first, but then
became an announcer.
A lot of commentating. I said, oh, good for you. I said, I'm sorry, I don't watch it. I don't know who you are. And
I don't even know who he is, and I trained him.
We became Kingpin. Listen, we became very good friends, and then, as good friends as we became, I was at a reception, and I happened to be surrounded by some female wrestlers, and they kept dropping his name, and then I found out a secret, and then I went to go see him at a personal appearance in Connecticut, and I went, "Hey Matt, did you forget to tell me something?" He goes, "What?" And I go, you have some sort of talent? He goes, Mario, please don't say anything. People are here trying to get my autograph. I go, Matt, you kind of left that detail out, didn't you? He goes, Mario, please. So
yeah,
I found out that little secret about him. And boy, he got nervous. He thought I was going to start shooting my mouth. No, but Matt Stryker's a good kid. I love him.
He's a good dude.
I love Bull James. He's another good guy. I love Bull to death. I got to meet these guys, and they're really good guys. And you know what upsets me, Kingpin? You keep saying ECW. Why didn't they take you along with the ride, man? Why didn't they take you along with the ride?
Yeah, I keep saying that too. But it is what it is, man.
What did Heyman couldn't do anything for you? He couldn't.
There's a lot of the boys that he just didn't take along, and we weren't part of it. And like I said, I accept it. Like I said, no ill will, but I wish he did. I would have definitely been a soldier because that's what I was.
We were also.
So,
well, on that note, gentlemen, I think we have elapsed our time. It was a very, very interesting discussion. A lot to think about on multiple levels. Mario, want to again thank you for your time. And can you let the fans know where they can find you on social media and any other plugs that you have regarding your school, etc.?
Sure. This is what I say every podcast. If you reference that you saw the podcast and you friend me on Facebook, I will accept your friend request. Please mention that you watched the podcast or at least have a mutual friend that I'm friends with, because if you friend me on Facebook and there are no mutual friends, I will delete it. So I will accept anybody's friend request on Facebook that's seen the podcast, number one. Number two, look up Paradise Alley Professional Wrestling. We are blessed on July 11th. We have a Gabe Sapolsky coming in, who is a writer, booker, and talent scout for the WWE, coming into the school to scout some talent. July 8th, we have a show at the Armada Brewing Company in New Haven, Connecticut. Richard Holiday had cancer for the past year. He is the original student, the first student out of Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling out of 2014. He made his comeback after being in remission from cancer at a show called Rarefied Air, which could be seen on Fight TV. So that's what's going on right now with Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling consists of myself, Paul Roma, Big Steve Tracy, who worked under the name of Dave Paradise in the WWF, Paul Perez, who spent about 5 years in the WWF. He worked with everybody from Dusty Rhodes to, you name it. He worked with all of them. So that's what Big Daddy calls the core four of Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. Please look up the Guardian of Chaos Big Daddy on YouTube. He goes over a lot of history of professional wrestling, and he's got good stuff to listen to on there. Other than that, we just plug away at 662 Co Avenue in East Haven. That's where Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling is located. That's where we teach. Roma called me this morning. Somebody's flying in July 3rd from Dubai to come to Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. So, that's
awesome.
That's what we do.
No, just curiosity. The guy who's coming is not a Kid Salami, is it? From the movie Paradise Alley. I'm just throwing out an old movie that I love.
Kingpin is funny because Roma, the school's actually in an alley.
Yeah.
So Roma in 2014, Roma goes, I got it. I go, what? He goes, Paradise Alley. Now, graduating from law school in 2010, I said, we're going to get a cease and desist letter
from Stallone.
So now they put Paradise Alley on Twitter. They copy Stallone on it. Stallone comes up and says, you took a page out of my book, guys. The best of luck to you. So that went okay. So
it's good. It's a great movie.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Kingpin. It's like, because I work with him one-on-one. So Jack Kingpin will appreciate this. So I look up at the board. It says Funk v Mancini. Now, the first thing that comes through my mind is Paradise Alley.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now I walk up to him and I go, Mr. Funk, I'm Mario Mancini. We're working together. He goes, Terry. I said, yeah, Mr. Funk. He goes, Terry. I go, never. I'll never call you that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
He said, okay, kid. I did the same thing to Harley Race. I said, Mr. Race, we're working together. He goes, call me Harley, kid. I said, I'm sorry. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I
It's
can't.
just a form of respect. That's all.
I can't
appreciate that.
I did that to Larry Zbyszko too. 3 guys I did that to. I just couldn't do it. So so that's what's going on. And
Great.
Just so you know, I'm sorry about the schedule thing, but just so you know, typically on these things, we want to go over so many more things. So feel free if you want me on again, I'll come on again. Not a problem.
Well, Mary, we appreciate you coming on. I mean, like I said, you took the time out of your day to even grace grace us with your presence, to
Oh,
give us your knowledge. You know, even my friend here appreciates you. You know,
no, lowest form on the wrestling food chain. I'm humble. I know who I am. I know what I am. And brother, you know what I mean? You probably had you know, you definitely went over more than I did, and you probably had a better career than I did. Trust me. So I definitely know. I definitely know my place. So, but the thing about it is you know, I love to talk about the business. I love to talk about different subjects and everything. And, you know, I'd be more than happy to go over things, and I enjoy doing podcasts, and I hope the fans enjoyed this too. So
absolutely. I did send you a friend request, so you'll see something pop up with my name on it.
You got it, bro.
So, but again, I do appreciate you. Like I said, you a plethora of knowledge, and you know, man who knows a lot about the business. You know, hopefully you could come back and we could talk some more shop.
I love it.
You know, and hopefully Jack will talk some more. You know, he just sits there, thought his screen froze. You know,
just looking stoic. Once again, Mario, thank you very much for your time. Kingpin, thank you as always. And fans, stay tuned. We will have an announcement of the next episode of Shooting from the Hip with the Kingpin and the Gentleman. Until then, take care.
Take care, guys.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV.